columnist for Forbes.com, professor at the University of Houston. Very pleased to have with us Mr. Larry Bell. Larry, how you doing tonight, sir?
Yeah, it's always great to come on. Thank you again.
You bet. All right, your latest piece, Disarming the Myths Promoted by the Gun Control Lobby. Where do you want to get started with this one, Larry? There are so many myths to tackle here.
Well, I think that's the whole thing, is that it's been all myths. You know, all this scaremongering about this or that's going to happen, and there's going to be vigilantes and you know, all this stuff, and it's none of it's happened. So I think it's important to just kind of get it out there and take a deep breath and look at the facts again.
I think so. Now, you know, one of the things that you talk about, you report, Caroline Brewer of the Anti-Gun Brady campaign, says that, quote, the research we've seen indicates fewer and fewer people owning more and more guns. Now, I don't know if the research that they have seen has been drawn by 4-year-olds using crayons, or if, you know, the leprechauns have been delivering this data to them in the dead of night. But Gallup shows a rise in the number of Americans reporting guns in their house. We've seen the NICS check system go absolutely bonkers a couple of days in 2011. The highest reported days of background checks being conducted. Now, again, that's not a perfect indicator of sales, but I think it's a pretty good one. And we've seen this dramatic switch just in terms of public opinion on firearms, which, again, I don't think would be happening, Larry, unless there were more and more Americans who are becoming familiar with firearms.
Well, I don't think anyway it's got very good numbers, because most people, you know, a lot of people that buy guns don't advertise it.
Right, and that's perfectly fine.
Yeah, but you know, I think all of us have drawn our own experience. I shoot pretty regularly once a week, and I see an awful lot of new people out shooting and learning to shoot, and not just men, not just women, but even, you know, people, I think, introducing their children to firearm safety and firearm sports. And I think that's universal. I get letters from people just even as a result of this article, where the people say that, you know, they've got a dozen friends that have just, you know, started shooting and are taking the lessons and so on. So I think we all have a sense that this is happening.
I think so. You know, we've talked with firearms instructors around the country. They're saying that their courses are filling up. USA Today had a story about this today, as a matter of fact, and they seem to be quite content in reporting a dramatic increase in the rise of gun owners in this country. So I think it is a real phenomenon. I think if you're around the issue and you're not trying to promote the idea that Americans shouldn't have guns, it is pretty obvious that more and more Americans are owning firearms. Now, one of the other things that you take on is the issue of national right to carry reciprocity.
Yes.
Dennis Hennigan, who was the acting president of the Brady campaign until a couple of weeks ago, says, quote, really, it is a national disgrace that the only piece of gun-related legislation to come to a vote since Tucson was this legislation that would have enabled dangerous concealed carriers like Jared Loughner to carry their guns across state lines. As if, Larry, a monster like Jared Loughner was interested in obeying the law.
Well, I think the gun lobby guys, the Brady guys, were upset because they hoped that they could hype up the Tucson thing, and I think more people are rational about that and reasonable. They understand this guy was a nutcase and is a nutcase, and some of those people fall through the cracks, and so they're always looking for an opportunity to turn some dastardly situation into a broad, generalized, you know, catastrophe. And right now, I think a lot of the Democrats and Obama's kind of keeping his head down on a lot of this stuff, because there's just too many Pennsylvania minor hunters and others out there that just don't cotton to these kinds of overreaches. But God forbid, after 2012, if we have another 4 years of this, I think it's going to be a different situation. I think there we've got to really be concerned about the next Supreme Court appointments, and a whole lot of things can change.
Yeah, no, I think you're right about that, and you know, it's interesting that Hennigan talks about this and says, well, you know, there's the only piece of gun-related legislation that would enable dangerous people to carry their guns across state lines, which again is just absolutely absurd. What the National Right to Carry Reciprocity Act of 2011 would have done, and again, it's passed the House, it's right now in the Senate. What it would do is ensure that people like Meredith Graves and the Ryan Jerome, the retired Marine from Indiana, these individuals who went to New York believing that they were in compliance with the law. When they saw a no guns allowed sign, they actually tried to comply with the law and turn their firearms over. And now they're facing 3.5 to 15 years behind bars. Those are the people that will be helped by the National Right to Carry Reciprocity Act of 2011. And when you even have anti-gunners like former New York Governor David Patterson saying individuals like Meredith Graves and Ryan Jerome shouldn't be facing prosecution for this, what is the argument against national right to carry reciprocity?
I think also that there's always been a lot of ambiguity, for people who are going on a trip and they feel uncomfortable not having some means of protecting themselves, and you're going on a trip and they have to Google the law to find out which states you can drive through. It's just not right, and I think having reciprocity really prevents people from being charged with criminality where it's absolutely a misplaced kind of charge. But I think that there was hope that they could hype the Tucson event into something that would provide a basis for really clamping down again and cranking this stuff up, just like the Clinton administration did every time when there was a school shooting or anything they could use as an excuse.
Right. Now, you also talk about defensive gun uses, and you say that gun control proponents often argue that having a gun actually puts people at risk because a criminal will take it away and use it against them. But you say that the reality suggests the opposite conclusion.
Well, there's a new Cato study that came out, and none of these studies are perfect because some of them draw from certain sources, and some of them only include incidents where somebody's actually shot and hurt and killed or whatever. There are a lot of instances also where people are frightened, where the bad guys are frightened away because someone has a gun and is armed, and so it's really hard to know. But the Cato study looked at newspaper reports, and they sampled quite a number of them, and to try to explore some of these. And it's not none of these are perfect surveys, but they're snapshots. They give you a pretty good idea, and it looks like the reverse is really true, where people who are being mugged or attacked or something, they're fighting for their lives, and they're very motivated to disarm the assailant, and so there's an awful lot of cases, probably a lot more cases, where someone having an arm and demonstrating that they're armed and they're not going to lay over easily, where that saves their life or their property, and so the Cato study is an interesting one, and it's a new one that again goes to news reports. It goes to the kind of stuff that gets published in the news, which on one hand is not perfect because newspapers pick the stuff that's most interesting.
Sure. Well, absolutely right. I mean, that's the thing. And, a lot of these defensive gun uses may not ever even be reported to the police. If it was simply a matter of saying, I have a gun, you might not have a police report. But I have noticed, Larry, that I think the media is starting to pick up on the fact that their audience likes these stories. You remember the story from Blanchard, Oklahoma, New Year's Eve, this 18-year-old widow home with her 3-month-old son when two men break in, and she retreats to her bedroom. She's got her son. She puts a bottle in his mouth, gets her gun out, calls 911, and ultimately kills one intruder as he's trying to break through the bedroom door, and the other intruder ran away. I mean, I saw that story reported all around the world.
Yeah.
There was something so compelling about this. We like stories where the good guy wins.
Yeah, I don't think we're a country of victims.
I think you're right.
I think the notion of being a victim is not a very attractive option, and in reality, probably the chances of something happening to you, an incident that's going to you is not an everyday kind of event, but I think it's the attitude of I'm not gonna be a statistic. I'm just not gonna.
Whoop! Did we lose Larry?
No, I'm still here.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. Yeah, you're not going to be a statistic.
Not willingly.
And I think, I think what we're seeing with more and more Americans owning firearms is that they have come to that conclusion as well. They don't want to be a statistic. They don't want to be a victim. They want to be able to protect themselves. And again, I think this bodes well for us as a society and as a culture that this is one area where we are sort of fighting. We're fighting back against the nanny state. We're fighting back against this idea that we really can't be responsible enough with our, to protect our own lives. And I think we're doing a better and better job of securing and strengthening our right to keep and bear arms. And I hope that actually pays other cultural and societal benefits.
Well, I hope so too. I think we're seeing an awakening that's occurring where people are saying, okay, we've tried big government, we've tried we've seen enough of that. I'm not going to call 911 if somebody's got a gun in my face or somebody's breaking in my door.
Right.
I'm either going to and I think to anticipate that there has to be a preparedness. You have to, not just a matter of owning a gun, but I think it's the understanding that a gun is a huge responsibility. More so, not just owning a gun, but understanding how you're going to react, and being prepared to how you're going to react, and how the family is going to be informed of what's going on. And then again, if people have guns and they don't enjoy shooting and they don't practice with them, then I think that's not a good thing. But more and more people are finding recreational sports to be very satisfying.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, again, look at what we're seeing on our television screens, where NBC Sports has just picked up 3 gun events. You've got Top Shot on the History Channel, Season 4.
Which a great promotion.
It is, absolutely. Season 4 debuted last Tuesday, and second episode of the season tonight on the History Channel. Not to mention, all of the shows that you'll see on Sportsman Channel and the Outdoor Network. But guns have gone mainstream. They're now they're not seen just on these sort of specialty or niche cable channels. They're out there on the Travel Channel. Anthony Bourdain went and hung out with Ted Nugent and went shooting. Andrew Zimmern on Bizarre Foods has gone shooting before. So you're seeing this in so many different areas. A lack of fear and a greater understanding of firearms. You're not seeing the ignorance about guns and gun ownership on display. Instead, you're seeing people want to get educated, and I think that makes all the difference in the world.
Well, another thing, as mentioned earlier, is this: when I go to the range and I go with a bunch of doctors every Sunday morning, and just kind of a thing we do.
Yeah.
Have breakfast afterwards, but I go there and I see fathers with daughters and sons, young kids who are learning responsibility, and you can see the pride that they have that they're being entrusted with something that is a responsibility. And I think it's a rite of passage that a lot of us had as children. When I remember my first Red Ryder BB gun. That was a big deal, and my first .22, and in the sense of it was growing into a life of responsibility and understanding that there are rules you follow, and it demystified the whole thing. It became something that became part of our life, and I think fewer people today grow up on ranches. They don't grow up with guns like maybe perhaps a lot of us did. But I think there's a bit of a resurgence in this right now.
I think that you're right. Listen, Larry, really appreciate you coming on the program tonight, sir. It's always a real pleasure getting a chance to catch up with you. And have you heard from any of your colleagues at the University of Houston about your latest piece?
They don't. They know me. They don't comment.
There's Larry going off again.
There's Larry. But as I tell people, I'm really bulletproof. I write a lot about the global warming nonsense, and if it's politically incorrect, I probably write about it.
Well, so I got to ask you about the global warming nonsense before we let you go. Have you been following this stuff from the Heartland Institute?
Oh, absolutely.
All right, so help me out here because I've been trying to figure this out. So you have not an advocate for global warming, but a guy who says that man-made.
You got a big fearmonger guy.
Okay, and he basically lied about who he was.
Right.
Got materials from this place called the Heartland Institute,
right,
which is a think tank that disputes the idea that we're all going to be underwater in 5 years.
Yeah, and they sponsor a lot of research. And I spoke at their international conference last summer. They're good people, and if there's anything remarkable in any of this, it's the fact that how much they get accomplished with on such a shoestring budget. But here's the guy who was in the real attack mode. Turns out to be the guy, and he's a prominent, calls himself a scientist, prominent guy who who then subsequently got the documents under false pretenses, and one of the documents is a total fake. It's just a total fake. Now, can I prove it's a fake? Well, I think it's forensically it's going to be pretty easy to do.
Yeah.
But it's so hokey. So it's not like the ClimateGate thing where they actually got live emails, from people that no one ever disputed they were real. A lot of this stuff is just hooked up to create the appearance that these people are a bunch of crazies funded by big oil, and it's really backfiring on them right now because they got caught with their hand in the cookie jar.
So they kind of wanted a ClimateGate for the climate skeptics,
that was the whole idea.
But they couldn't get one, so they tried to create one.
So they tried to create one, which is not good if you get caught. And Heartland's going after him now, and God bless him for doing it, because this thing was it's one thing to take confidential documents. That's not a nice thing to get them under false pretenses and then distribute them. But
right.
It's a whole lot worse when you make them up.
Well, yeah, absolutely right. Hey, Larry, as always, sir, real pleasure to have you. And next time there's more information about either the global warming stuff, the Second Amendment stuff, we love having you on the show. You're always welcome back.
Well, thanks.
Anytime.
Tell the readers about that article so I can get some hits on it, will you?
I certainly will. Forbes.com. Just look for Larry Bell, and you can find all of his columns there, including the latest on the global warming stuff. Larry, we'll talk to you again very soon, sir.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
All right. Have a great night.